When my wife Rachel and I were dating, she was a server at Cheesecake Factory. Who here loves Cheesecake Factory? This is beyond the point. I have a love-hate relationship with Cheesecake Factory. The food is really good, but the menu is so big, I don't know what to choose. You get the cheese, it's like, what? It's like 20 pages of the menu. Anyways, so she's at the Cheesecake Factory at the Americana in Glendale, if you know where that's at. And it was fascinating. As I'm getting to know her, and I was selling e-readers at a Barnes & Noble in the same plaza as her during graduate school when we met. So we would meet up during breaks or lunches. It worked out quite well. I kind of peer pressured her into dating me that way. It was great. Here's what I quickly learned about the restaurant industry that I didn't really know. It was that if you were a restaurant server, you hated working Sunday brunch. Anybody know why? No tips. So if you were scheduled Sunday brunch, so Sunday late morning, early afternoon, and then Rachel would get scheduled for this, and she was like, oh my gosh, I hate this. And because she couldn't give away the shift, you try to text someone, hey, can you cover me for my Sunday brunch? I'm going to be out of town, or I'm sick, or no, you're not. But no, I can't cover your shift. Because no one wanted them, and no one wanted them because guess who comes to restaurants for Sunday brunch? You and I, AKA churchgoers. And what are they known for in the restaurant industry? Bad tippers and cheap. Some of you all ooh, that's why I got that dirty look. Yeah. So check this out. Now, I knew this from Rachel, and so I was like, okay, well, I know this to be true, but I'm sure there's got to be articles written about this. So I Googled this, and sure enough, here's an article written. This is real. You can just Google this. When Christians mistreat restaurant servers right after worshiping God. Let me read for you a couple direct quotes from servers quoted in that article. Here we go. I absolutely hated working on Sundays, having to deal with the church crowd. They were always the loudest, most demanding, and rudest people, especially when they came in as a group. They would run you like crazy, and here it is, and then they would leave the most pitiful tip and a gospel tract. Next one. They never leave the payment until right before darting out, only to have the server come to realize they received a low tip, especially for the amount of people and how long they occupied the table afterwards. On top of that, and notice the theme here, they leave a church flyer or gospel tract behind for the server. This would usually end with the server getting upset and venting to everyone in the back about how crappy church people are, and heck no, none of us will ever go to your church or event. And now let's just make things short and tidy. They did not tip well. You just knew that when you worked the Sunday lunch crowd that you weren't going to make much. Oh, we all can go to Kenwoods after this, so we're going to be making bank over there. With that in mind, let's read a verse now from the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy 6. If you're new here or you weren't here last week, I just started a very brief, short 3-week series. This is week 2, and we are immersing ourselves in a very small particular passage in 1 Timothy 6. And we're going to cover just 2 verses this morning. Verse 18 is one of them. Here's verse 18. Pretty plain and simple, black and white. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. According to that verse alone, I could share many more with you. But just taking 1 Timothy 6:18, Christians, followers of Jesus, should be the most generous people. But so many people, at least out of the restaurant industry, don't see us that way. So there's a tension. But then the tension deepens even more. Because then when you have preachers like me who then teach and preach about money, generosity, and giving, then Christians themselves get turned off and consider the topic taboo. And so it's like a hamster wheel, right? Christians are known to be cheap and stingy, not generous. The Bible says they should be generous. So then when preachers tell them that they should be generous, oh, I don't like that. Now, that all may be a bit of an oversimplification. I happen to know quite a few of you in here, and you're incredibly generous. Okay? Louis, I'm getting to the arrogant part in 10 minutes. Seriously, Paul says don't be arrogant. And on that note, I'll be expecting an invite to Kenwood's after this, Louis. Okay. If you're new here, I love Louis. Louis loves me. We have a great relationship. There's a reason why I think we have this tension from whatever kind of viewpoint you have. And I think it's this. I think it's preachers' fault. People like me, I honestly, I think it's my fault. Because when we preach and teach about money or generosity or giving or whatever the topic is, I don't think that we do a good job explaining why followers of Jesus should be generous. So I would say it's on preachers. What preachers usually do is just tell Christians, you should be generous. They leave it at that and they say, just give us your money. And no wonder people don't like hearing that. And not only do I think we don't aptly explain the why part, I also don't think we even explain the how part that well. In other words, as it pertains to this series, which is just 1 Timothy 6, couple verses, I think the way we act is we just quote verse 18, which is a command to be generous. And it's very clear. But we don't talk about the verse right before it, verse 17, much less the whole context of chapter 6, much less what comes after verse 18, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about next week. And no wonder then that generosity doesn't make sense. No wonder then that it comes across as a cold, taboo command. And then, of course, it follows in that Christians are known to be stingy and cheap. So here's what I want to do this morning. Very simple. I just want to tell you why Christians should be the most generous people alive. I think the why speaks for itself, and so I don't feel a need to say anything else. And then we'll get a little bit into the how, and that actually will roll over to next Sunday as well. So here's what we got to do. If you got a Bible, open it up. If you need one, free orange ones underneath your chairs, page 812. We're going to be on page 812 last Sunday, this Sunday, and next Sunday. So get to know 812. Let me just read now. I already quoted you verse 18. Let me back up verse before, and now let's read verse 17. Command those who are rich in this present world. Stop. Command those who are rich in this present world. There's a great website. You can just Google this, but don't do it now, because as I just tell my 7-year-old baseball team that I coach my son, eyes on me, okay? I can see when you guys go on your phone. Eyes on me. There's a website called givingwhatwecan.org. givingwhatwecan.org. Not a church website. It's actually a secular website, but it's a really good one. Forbes, Time Magazine, all these well-known publications have endorsed this website. And one of the things that you can do on this website, it's very, very interesting. You can find out how rich you are from a global perspective. And it's very easy. It'll take you 10 seconds to do. Here's the only thing you have to enter. You just put in your household income, how many adults in your family, if you have kids, and then how many, and what country you live in. And it will spit out a very calculated, they have a lot of data to support this, your wealth globally speaking. So just to make things easy, I did an example for us. So I said, okay, and I went conservative here. All right, I said, okay, let's say that you have an annual household income of $35,000 for one adult, 0 kids, okay? $35,000 a year, it's just you, no kids. Now, you can look around the room, you're not here for the 11 a.m. service, but our church, like our main demographic would be young families, my age, 2-3 kids. Just gonna be blunt, dual income, you're making way more than $35,000, okay? I would say demographically, our church is probably like 2 adults, easily over 100K, and maybe 2-3 kids. But I just went conservative, okay? Here's the outcome. So, if you got a household income of $35,000 with one adult, you are in the richest 4.9% of the global population. Let me explain this with some other sentences. That means your income is 9 times the global median, and that means that you're richer than 95.1% of humanity on the planet right now. So just $35,000 a year, okay? You're wealthier. You have more money than 95% of people in the world. Now, of course, that's the world, not just America. America is one of the wealthiest nations, right? But from a global perspective. So, Paul says, verse 17, command those who are rich in this present world. If you make $35,000, he's writing to you. Now, just for the sake of it, let's say that's you. You make $35,000 a year and you give away 10% of your income. Next slide. And by the way, this is a side note. This is so fascinating to me because this website, again, you can go to givingwhatwecan.org. They say if you were to donate 10% of your income, they're not even like talking church tithe, but it's fascinating that they use that number, 10%. So you'd have $3,500 less because you give that away in donations. You would still be in the richest 6% of the global population, and your income would still be 8.1 times the global median. Let's continue on, verse 17. Command those who are rich in this present world. Louis, here you go. Not to be arrogant. Now, when I think about my income, my money, and I hear someone else say, hey, Mark, here's what you need to do with your money. You need to be generous. Mark, you should give 10% of your income away. I mean, Mark, don't you know? Come on, you're in the 95% wealthiest people, or 4.9% wealthiest people of the world. Here's my response to that. Bro, as my 7-year-old son says to me, bro, that's my money, and you can't tell me what to do with it. Because it's mine. It's mine. I earned it. Now, isn't that the American motto? Work hard, play hard. So most people, most of us in here, I would assume, have worked for our money in some capacity. Now, maybe some of us harder, whatever others. And this is actually a very important thing to say. The Bible, in the book of Proverbs, actually says that you should work hard. And it says one of the reasons why you should work hard is for profit. So working hard and getting a profit is deeply biblical. I am not saying you shouldn't work hard, and nor am I saying there's something wrong with profit. Absolutely, but here's my point. Though you may earn your money, you can become arrogant with your money when you believe that you are the owner of your money. You may earn your money, absolutely, as you should. But you can become arrogant with it when you believe that you are the owner of it. Here's the Bible's depiction of money and wealth. It's that you and I are stewards and God is the owner. God is the owner of all possessions, money, currency, real estate, whatever it may be, and we are his stewards. We are his money managers, if you will. And here's the thing. You will be arrogant with your money until you wholeheartedly believe deep in your gut that it's his. To me, that is the core of biblical generosity. Now, you're kind of like, I'm not buying that, Mark. God's not the one waking up at 6 a.m. and working or working at 11 p.m. at night. Like, what do you mean he's the owner? No, I earned it. It's mine. Well, let me take you through. Let's go deeper. I want us to think. Like we're church, like we deep intellect. God has given us brains, so let's think. Let me ask you some deep questions about arrogance and money. Let's start off with the easier ones. Who gave you the ability to work in the first place? Let's go a little bit deeper. Who designed your brain that allows you to think strategically and make money? Even more so, who puts the breath inside of your lungs every day for you to stay alive? Let's go deeper. Did you decide that you would be born? I asked that last week. This is fascinating to think through. Did you earn and did you choose where you would be born, when you would be born, and the culture that you would be born and raised in? Meaning, what if you were born 200 years ago? So in the history of time, that's nothing, just 200 years ago. Would you have been able to earn money and be successful if today, let's say you're a software engineer? No, software didn't exist back then. So the wealth that you have now, software engineers, they make great money, and they work hard. But if you weren't born now, today in America, you wouldn't have anything that you have. And it's actually not even just a money thing. It's even like a skill thing or a gifting thing. Example, so like growing up, like I was a decent baseball player. If I grew up in Iceland, would I have played varsity baseball all 4 years in high school? Probably not. Like you don't play baseball in Iceland. Like maybe I would become like an ice fisherman or something. Yeah, whatever they do in Iceland, I don't know. My point is, yes, you work and you earn stuff today. Of course. Not saying you don't. What I am saying is that is a shallow and incomplete understanding of stewardship, because it is God who has created you in the first place, and it is God who's decided when, where, and what culture that you would be born in to earn your wealth to begin with. So your ability to earn money is what? 100% dependent upon God creating you in the first place. This is what I mean by God is the owner and we are the steward. Now it's interesting, the scriptures. Oh, Mark, okay, that was clever. Like, where's that in the Bible though? Let me tell you. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 17. It's actually two verses, verse 17 and 18. I don't know if we have this slide for verse 18 or not, but here it is. You may say to yourself, and how clever is the Bible? Like, so this is written 3,000 years ago. So 3,000 years ago, this is how humanity was thinking, and it hasn't changed one bit. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. Verse 18, let me just read it out loud for you. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Whew. So you say, oh yeah, it's all mine. Verse 18, but remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. See, because everything is from God, generosity, check this out, is only giving back to God what is already his. And then actually you think about it and you're just like, well, you can't give something back to somebody that's already theirs in the first place. Yeah, exactly. God has entrusted you as his stewards over creation, and we are to invest his money for the kingdom of God to further his purposes. Come back next Sunday, and I'm going to talk about investing, but from an eternal perspective. You may check your ROI every day on Wall Street, Fidelity, or whatever your thing is. Why don't we check our investments eternally? That's just a plug for next week. Andrew Murray says this, one of my favorite quotes about generosity. The world will ask, what does a man own? But Christ will ask, how does he use it? So, we're just a couple words in. Question, are you humble or arrogant about your money? Are you humble or arrogant about your money? Meaning, do you view it as your money or as God's money? Because if you view everything you have as God's, he owns it, he's entrusted it to you to invest and steward, then you will be humble about it. You'll be humble. But if you view everything you have as yours because you're the one who solely earned it, then it's inevitable that you will be arrogant about it. Now, you may not say that, but in your mind, when you go to sleep or when you make that deal, I got it. That's arrogance. Back to the rest of 1 Timothy 6:17. Command those who are rich in this present world, covered that. Not to be arrogant, covered that. This next part we looked at last week. Not to put your hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, right? Talked about people who win the lotto. It's not certain. If actually, it may be more certain that you lose it and go down. And here, now, I told you guys, why should Christians be the most generous people? This is the why right here. I'm going to spend the rest of the morning right here. But to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Now remember the question of this series. On the back of U.S. currency, the question is, it shows it right there on the screen, in God we trust. How you handle your money, just straight up, how you handle your money, I would say it boils down to this one question. Do you really trust God? Do you really trust him? As Paul writes here, do you put your hope in God? Another word for hope is trust. Do you put your trust in God who richly gives you everything you need? The way that you use your money reveals if you truly trust him or not. It will. Money doesn't lie. But one thing that I'm convinced of is that many of us don't give, or many of us don't live a generous lifestyle because we are fearful and anxious about what if we don't have enough. You see that? So it's about trusting God, but then we're filled with anxiety and fear about, but if I give, will I have enough? I think that's what it comes down to. One pastor puts it this way: our generosity today is crippled by fear about tomorrow. What a line. I think that gets to the root of it. There's this great 2 sentences. So back there at the Info Center, we have 3 books available. I restocked one. So there was one that wasn't there last week. It's there. So there's 3. Go back there. Don't take my word for any of this stuff. Go deeper. This is such an important conversation. So one of the books of the 3 that's back there is a devotional. One day, I think it's like a 20-day devotional. You do it 3 weeks, take you 5 minutes a day. It's so good. Day 5 says this: the only way to ever stop worrying about money is to break its strangled hold on your heart by becoming generous. When you give money away, you stop worshiping it. One of the best ways to learn how to trust God is to be generous. Because it'll tell you, ooh, how much am I trusting in my money? Now, I love preaching, but preaching comes at a great cost. Because I believe that I should practice what I preach. And so that means I get convicted a lot, which isn't fun. So 2 weeks ago, my car, I got a 2016 Ford Explorer, and paid off. Both of our cars are paid off. I don't believe in debt. I'll drive those things for 30 years. So, what'd you say? And so I get out of the car in the garage one day, this is 2 weeks ago, and I noticed that there's some orange pinkish fluid on the garage floor. And I'm like, oh, I got a 7-year-old boy, baseball every week. Parker spilled his Gatorade. Okay. And 2 days later, so I wiped it up. 2 days later, man, this thing is pinching my ear. 2 days later, pinkish orange fluid, same spot. There's no more Gatorade in the house. Oh. No, and this just happens to be right under the engine of my car where it sits parked in the garage. Okay. The car's drinking Gatorade. So I'm not handy, but I'm not dumb. It's like, okay, I got a car problem. So call up a local guy. If you need a local guy, I got one for you. He's amazing. And make an appointment, drop the car off like a week ago. And, I'm thinking like, okay, it's just a little leak, like something just needs to be fixed, yeah. So a couple hours go by, I get the phone call back. And the lady's so nice. She's like, hey, Mark, we looked at your car, we found the problem. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh no, it's coming. Bring it. She said, hey, your water pump is broken. And I'm like, oh, that's not a problem. That's an easy fix, right? Just put a new water pump in. She said, well, the problem with the water pump, at least for a Ford Explorer, is that you got to take the whole engine out. So she's like, so it's high labor cost. And I'm like, ooh. And so she's like, I'll just be honest with you. She's like, it's going to cost $2,500. And I'm like, $2,500. Here's what I can do with $2,500. Let's go to Cabo, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, okay, like, just be honest with me. Like, you guys aren't pulling my leg. I'm not pulling your leg. She's like, I know you're a pastor. I'm like, okay, thank you. So, okay, gotta do what you gotta do. Because, I looked up Blue Book value, 2016 Ford Explorer, 100,000 miles. It's worth more than $2,500. I'm like, okay, I don't want to buy a new car right now, so fine. Here we go. Water pump, $2,500. And so hung up, and here are my thoughts. I'm like, didn't have that budgeted. I can think of 5 things I can do with $2,500. Very easy. And so then what I began thinking was this. You know what? This wasn't budgeted. This isn't my fault. Like, it's not like I did something wrong and, whatever. Maybe I should just decrease or pause my giving to the bridge right now. $2,500, not what I thought. Oh, and you know what? A couple things are coming up in the next month. Christmas. I got 3 kids. You know what that means? Hey guys, Santa's on vacation this year. Or he's bringing us a water pump here. They're like, Dad, we don't want that. Like maybe like a super soaker water pump. But and I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, man, end of your giving's come up. If you knew here, we always do an end of your giving initiative that starts in December. And, I want to give to that. I want to practice what I preach. But, maybe not this year. I got a $2,500 water pump to give. And then here was the conviction and the gentle whisper of the Holy Spirit to me. Mark, who do you trust? Who's your hope in? Mark, do you trust in me, knowing that I will provide everything you need? See, here's the thing about generosity and giving. God doesn't need your money. Giving is not because God needs your money. It's actually not about money. You know that God's doing just fine? It's not like God's kind of like, oh no, the American economy. Oh, I'm feeling tight right now. I better lay off the sun for a couple weeks. Bless you. God's doing just fine. I saw that Elon Musk got that new $1 trillion pay package from Tesla. Yeah, the wealth of God makes Elon Musk look poor. Generosity is not because God needs your money. He's doing quite fine. Someone put it this way. Stewardship is not about raising money. It's about raising Christians who willingly trust God. One more. This one from Rooted. Anybody who's gone through Rooted just this past week 8, it's on money. I pulled this just straight from one of our devotionals in our Rooted program. God doesn't need our money. He owns everything. Giving is not God's way of raising money. It's his way of raising people with surrendered hearts, and he wants people to learn to trust and love him. This is why I have zero shame talking about money, because I want to pastor and help lead and live out myself a congregation who radically trusts God. In my situation, speaking out of humility and transparency, God isn't asking me to cut my generosity because of my expenses. He's asking me to trust him with my expenses by continually giving. Christians should be the most generous people. Why? Because we believe and trust in the most generous God. The God who richly provides for us, and all he asks is, do you trust me? But Mark, why should we trust in this God? Okay, that sounds great, but bro, I need some proof. Why are you willing to put so much trust in this God that I can't see, think, hear, feel? Why? This doesn't make sense. I'll tell you why it makes sense. Because Jesus has already proven to you that he is radically generous to you, and the proof of that is the cross. Jesus left the riches of heaven to become poor on earth so that we might become the children, and check this out, the heirs of God. There is no greater act of generosity in the history of the world than God sacrificially dying to give you his life. That is the definition of generosity. He gave his own life so that you might have eternal life. Think about it. There was nothing more that God could have given you. Mark, he could have given me my own planet. That actually would have been easier for God. It was way more tough, and the ultimate cost for him to have himself killed to give you his life. And your hope can be certain in that. There literally wasn't anything else of more value that God could have given you than his own life. And so here's the point. The ultimate motive of generosity is found in the generosity of God himself towards you. And when you trust in that, when you really grapple with it, then you can freely, humbly, and radically give to others. Christians should be the most generous people alive because we serve the most generous God alive. A God so generous that he gave his own life. God isn't stingy. God isn't cheap. And God doesn't work from a scarcity mindset. Can you imagine if God worked from a scarcity mindset? I'm not going to give you any of those sunflowers today. I just don't feel like it. No, he gives us everything. and he promises to provide for you. That is 1 Timothy chapter 6. The God who richly promises to provide for you. And then he said, oh, by the way, for your enjoyment. When you realize that God has freely given to you, you can freely give to others. And so my question for you this morning is this. Do you trust that God will provide for your every need? Now, I got to caveat that. Not your desires, your needs. God doesn't promise you a big house, a Porsche, and a luxury vacation, or World Series tickets to the Dodgers. Some of y'all praying for that the other week. God doesn't necessarily give you your desires, but he promises to meet your needs. And so to grow in generosity means ultimately that you need to grow in a journey of trust. Because here's the psychology of it. When you sacrificially give, you know what you're doing? You're giving God the opportunity to show up in your life. And then that's when the Christian life is adventurous and risky and fun, because then you get to say, oh my gosh, I was so scared when I gave this, but man, 2 weeks later, this just magically showed up, or this person took me out to lunch, or whatever. I don't know what, right? But that's when God shows up, is that when we live like this instead of like this. And isn't it interesting that God, he was killed because he was going like this. Here's what I want to do now. I want to invite up Kevin. Kevin's going to come back up for announcements. Let's give him another round of applause. So one of my goals in this series, I had Rachel share this week, Kevin this morning, is for people other than me to share. Because I think it's different when you hear it from me versus different. Kevin, come on over. And I also want to give you a hug. Any Ohio State fans in here?
Go Bucks! OH.
Oh, okay. This guy likes Ohio State.
Undefeated.
Oh, okay.
So far.
But not
Don't
humble. So a couple things about Kevin. Here's why I'm having Kevin share. I love Kevin. We've known each other, year and a half-ish, thereabouts. The one thing that Kevin has taught me, and his wife Tamara, and they have a daughter named Aria as well. Kevin has shown me generosity. And so to hear words from someone who lives it out, I've never told you this, but we had Starbucks about a year ago, whatever, and just the things that he was telling me in that conversation about generosity and why it's important, ministered to me. And I was just like, oof, come on. So Kevin and I talked on the phone 2 days ago. I said, hey, here's what I'm preaching on. Here's what we're doing. Can you just share your own journey of generosity, and let's just let that minister to people? Yeah? So here's Kevin. Go for it.
Thanks, Mark. So good. Like some of you in the room, I was raised in a Catholic home. And growing up, I remember when my mom would give my brother and I $1 or $2. So when the basket came by in the pew, I'd have something to put in. And so I grew up with this kind of ritual or a habit that you give when you're in church. And you don't give when you're not in church. And so that just I never really thought about it. It was kind of subconscious. So growing up, that's what we did. And so even when my wife and I got married, we would give when we came to church. And if I happened to have a bill, in my wallet, that's what we put in as it went by. And then I remember we attended a service at one point like this, talking about generosity and giving and trusting God. And the challenge was to be consistent. And I felt pierced by that. And so we did, for the first time years ago, we did automated giving. We went to my bank and just said, okay, every week we're gonna set this automatically, and it just went. And then every Sunday, whether we were sitting in chairs or not, we were giving to the church. Now, I'll share with you that doubled our giving, which is kind of telling on myself that we're going to church half the time. but they automatically, just by doing that one thing, it enabled us to be, and I didn't raise the amount at that point. It was just about being consistent. And so we made that step. And then there was another phase, maybe a year or two later, where we went to church and we were challenged, invited, to increase our giving by 1%. And the pastor actually went through a mathematical kind of approach and said, look, calculate your annual salary. And we were invited to calculate whatever we were doing and figure out what percentage of your giving are you giving to the Lord and to the Lord's ministry and to trust in God. And they invited us to increase it by 1%. And they said, if you calculate you're giving 2%, go to 3. If you're doing 7%, go to 8. And it was hard for us because like my wife's a contractor. We don't get paid like necessarily on an annual salary at the time. So it was a little harder to do, but it's possible to get close. And even if the giving was sporadic, or if like you're a realtor, maybe it's just every once in a while you get that check. But the invitation was then if you can't do it annually, then do it either monthly or quarterly or by project or by check or by the week. Whatever you do, just increase even every week. If you put a $10 bill in, try to give 11. If you do a $22 bill or a $20 bill, try to do $22. So that was the next kind of step in our giving journey, was to go from consistent to then ratchet it up 1%. And it took us a number of years to do that, going up 1 or 2% a year until we were at that biblical, tithing of 10%. And then we were able to do that through automated giving seamlessly. And I'll be honest with you, we never missed a week, and I never missed the money. Like Rachel spoke last week, we spend money sometimes pretty loosely on Amazon, at Target, at Starbucks. And so when it was the giving God, the first fruits, and it went out of the bank account right away, I honestly never missed it. I thought I would. We never really missed it. And then I want to share a story that happened to us. My wife and I were both working full-time years ago, and my daughter was young, and we were having a discussion about whether or not she should quit her job and be a stay-at-home mom, because we were paying money for daycare. And we were missing out on those first moments of some of her words and her steps. And so we were having this deep conversation. We were praying if we financially could afford for her to be a stay-at-home mom. And then the very next day, I got an email. And about a year prior, I was doing some side consulting, and a year prior, I sent a proposal. It was what I call a moonshot proposal. It was one of those, it would be great if it came through, but probably wouldn't. It was a big amount. And I sent that email a year ago, and the lead fizzled. It was cold. I forgot all about it. And the day after we're praying about this and talking about this, they responded and say, hey, Kevin, it's been a year, but now we're ready to move forward with that proposal that you sent us. It was the exact same amount as her annual salary, which wasn't even the plan or the forethought at the time. And I just looked at her and says, we didn't pray for a sign, but we got one. And it was like undeniably God telling us, it's time. Quit your job, stay at home. We diverted the money going to daycare, back into the family. And it was amazing. And he has provided ever since that decision. And we don't always get a sign as clear as that. And it doesn't always happen. In fact, I think it's happened 2 or 3 times in my life, something that clear, but it was clear. And then the next step in our giving journey actually was just about a year, maybe 2 years ago. I was watching a sermon online, a different church, and Pastor Mark is preaching on 1 Timothy 6, but this other sermon I was watching was on Malachi 3:10. And in Malachi 3:10, God says, test me. He says, test me with your resources, and I will open the floodgates of heaven and pour so many blessings upon you, you won't have anywhere to store it. And I was really impacted by that. And so as a result of that passage and meditating and praying or thinking about that then in our business, we decided to start tithing, giving God first fruits of our business, 10% off the top, before taxes, before payroll. And we tested God, and he responded. And it has been amazing what he has done as a result in our business. And so I want to encourage you that if you have a business, if you're a contractor, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're a realtor, if you're leading a small organization or a medium-sized organization, I encourage you to start that conversation and that prayer of how could you even tithe, not just on your personal resources coming into your personal account, but how about from the corporate side of giving and using that. And so I actually prayed my prayer, this might be oversharing, I prayed, I said, God, I want you to be my business partner. I said, how about a proposition for you? And I made him a partner in the business to give him 10%, and it has been amazing since then. Footnote, it's not about the dollar amount. It's not about how much it is, but it's about taking the next step from wherever you are. When I was not giving, it was about just giving. When I was giving sporadically, it's about giving consistently. When it's giving consistently, it's about going up, doing the math and going up 1%. And wherever you are, it's going to the next step. So on your card, grab that little postcard, rather that's on your chair. They put it out here for us to look at, and I love this because it actually parallels with our experience in my home. And I encourage you, if you've never given, I encourage you to give. Just that first, any amount, and watch how it changes your heart. It may not change exponentially your environment or your bank account, but just watch how it changes you. And if you're giving sporadically, I want to encourage you to give consistently. If you're giving consistently, I encourage you to do the math. Pull out a spreadsheet. I pulled out Excel. I'm like, okay, how much am I looked at last year's giving statement, last year's taxes, how much am I giving? I encourage you to take a minute and do some math. And if you can, increase 1% to God. And where my wife and I, where we are, is where our journey's not done. We're ready at that next step we're praying about what does that look like for us to be sacrificial? What does it look like for us to do that additional offering? And I'll just end by saying I'm excited to see what God is gonna do in our life. And I'm excited to see what God is gonna do in yours. And I'm excited to see what God is gonna use through this, the generosity and the gift of giving through this church for our community. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great, man. And Kevin has just modeled generosity, actually to a lot of people that I know through his life. And it's been a huge blessing. I want to go ahead and invite up the worship team. And if you're part of the prayer team, you can come up, both sides. You know, let me give you actually kind of a sneak peek of where we're going next Sunday. Because I'm kind of doing all these things in order in that. Last Sunday was on purpose first in terms of contentment, because I just think, at least for me, I'm not content. And you first have to be content. Then you talk about generosity. And then the last thing that we'll talk about next week is investing. I mean like spiritual investment. I never got taught like the importance, and I don't think most people do until they get maybe into their 30s, if not honestly into their 40s, like a retirement package, like, you know, whether you have a 401k or a pension, stuff like that. And man, if secular culture does that, how much more should the church, in the sense of, we believe theologically that we live for eternity. And when you invest in the kingdom of God, and it doesn't, whether it's the bridge or another church or a homeless ministry, right? Like the kingdom of God is not limited to these walls by no means. But you are actually investing into eternity. Like there's an eternal ROI. And that's what I'm gonna talk about next week. And what generosity is, when you give, it's like going to the gym. I go to the gym, secret, I hate going to the gym. But I go to the gym because I know it's healthy for my body. And every time I do it, it becomes a little bit easier. And I walk out and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I would say that is what the practice of giving is like, is that it might hurt a little bit. I would actually say that's probably a good thing. If it doesn't hurt, there's probably needs to be a heart check. And then when you give, your heart expands and it becomes more to the heartbeat of God. And it forces you to trust Him. The best thing for any Christian is to live a trustful, surrendered heart who's radically living so much like Jesus that you're forced on dependence upon Him. Sometimes I don't think I live in enough trust of God, and because I'm not doing things that take me out of my comfort zone. And so God's like, Mark, bro, you got a $2,500 water pump. You still need to give because I want to take you out of your comfort zone because I want you to see what I'm going to do in your life. That only happens if I give. I want an uncomfortable Jesus-y life because God Himself lived an uncomfortable life for us on the cross. And that's the extreme example of generosity. Could we all stand? If you need prayer for anything this morning, it doesn't have to be anything about money, generosity, retirement plans, whatever. You know, we've had stories here during pre-service prayer. Kelly talked about this. You know, there's people here at the bridge, like through Alpha, who are getting healed. How cool is that? God is moving. People are getting baptized in a couple weeks. Marriages are being restored. God is moving. He's here. He's alive. We're not just walking through motions. we're living the life, as Paul says, we look at this next week, to take hold of the life that is truly life. This is it. The kingdom of God is at hand. Are you willing to surrender and trust it? Come, Holy Spirit, minister to us. We want to be desperate for you, Jesus. We want you more than we want anything else. Come, Holy Spirit.